So we know we have addressing systems for targeting. You can target another individual by addressing them by their name. You can target an individual's home because their home has an address. And we have addressing systems on the computer side of things to target a computer on a network. We have IP addresses. But we also have another type of address that comes with networking, and that's called a MAC address. MAC addresses stand for Media Access Control Address. But what is this address and why is it so important? Well, I want to clarify that this address is important for local networks. It's not actually important for internet connectivity. With internet connectivity, you're using IP addresses to target that computer over here or target that server over there. However, IP addresses can change. They do have a certain variableness to them. Now, of course, you can lock an IP address down through a registrar system to a server. But however, when it comes to your ISP handing out public IP addresses, well, when you disconnect from your ISP and reconnect, you can get a different public IP address. And likewise with your local computers. Your local computers are assigned private IP addresses via NAT or DHCP. And this allows you to disconnect and reconnect at certain points in time, and you will be assigned a private IP address that may be different, or it could even be the same private IP address that was allocated to another device. So even though the IP address is specific, it allows you to target a specific computer, but it only allows you to target that specific computer via that address at that point in time of connectivity. If the computer disconnects, it can be given another identity. Now, if you can imagine you have lots and lots of friends and all of a sudden they start changing their identity every 2 seconds, it's going to be very hard to keep your address book up to date. So, with local networks, for security reasons, we have MAC addresses. Media Access Control addresses are physically hard-coded in the silicon, meaning they are literally positive and negative charges or ones and noughts, and they are provided by the manufacturer. So this becomes very unique. People call this a hard-coded address because it literally is positive and negative charges in the silicon, and it's also very unique. And the uniqueness is the important point. It allows for network administration and to identify the media access control devices that are connecting to the network. It allows us to identify that silicon and say that's that computer. So if we take a look at this, you have a network and I let Dodgy Dave come in and he wants to connect. So I disconnect one of my devices and I reconnect Dave's device. Now Dave's device is now connected. And he's just been allocated the exact same private IP address as the previous device, which can happen. So now Dodgy Dave is on my IP address that I once had, and he downloads some dodgy packets. Now let's say my other computers get infected. Bad. So now I need to look at the access logs. I need to find out who's responsible for downloading this dodgy stuff. And I can't just go up to Dodgy Dave and just accuse him out of the blue. I have to have evidence and proof. So one of the ways that I can have evidence and proof is not through an IP address, but via a MAC address. That MAC address is unique to the media access control or Dodgy Dave's media access control device. And I know that Dodgy Dave is just connected. He's downloaded something dodgy on my network, and I can identify those packets and that specific silicon that has downloaded those dodgy packets. Immediately I can go to Dodgy Dave and say, look, your MAC address has shown on these packets, you've been on this website, you've downloaded all this rubbish on my network, you know, you owe me damages, so forth. MAC addresses are very unique for identification. IP addresses are great for identification whilst there is connectivity, but they are not wholly unique in and of themselves to a specific computer. So now we can understand why MAC addresses are very important. But please do understand, even though it's hard-coded in the silicon, there are tricky things you can do on the computer to easily mask your MAC address. But it's important to note that we do have MAC addresses for security reasons as well. As network administrators, you can monitor what silicon is connecting to your network, and you can monitor that by its MAC address. And if you see a MAC address that is unfamiliar, you can block it and say, no, I'm not going to allow you to connect. So even if they get the username and password and they try to connect to the network, I can say, no, block it, because that MAC address is not identified. So even if they get that data, they still can't connect. So that is another layer of security, and that's why it's important to understand MAC addresses. Also, MAC addresses, again, are just a binary base 2 number to identify the particular media or silicon, because again, we can only work with ones and noughts in the hardware. And it is 48 bits in length. Again, it's assigned by the manufacturer at its conception, at its birth, and we can easily use that MAC address to find out what silicon is connecting.